Good afternoon, University of Chicago alumni. My name is Josh Levitt, college class of 2010, and I work on the U Chicago Alumni Career Programs team. Our goal is to create resources and programs to help you grow in your career. This is week one of our signature Young Professional series, and we are joined today by Mary Beth Ziegler, an executive career coach who will show us all about how those small changes to your LinkedIn can make a significant difference in achieving your career goals. We're going to learn about how to enhance your online presence and get the most out of the most powerful tools for professional development and professional growth. This is going to be a fun interactive workshop in ways to learn ways that you can refine your LinkedIn. I recently learned that LinkedIn is actually among the longest standing social networking platforms, launched the same year as MySpace back in 2003. So we are working with one of the longest standing and most robust tools out there. Happy to introduce Mary Beth Ziegler. Take it away.
Okay, thank you so much, Josh. Welcome, everybody. Great to have you here today. I'm also alum. I did my MBA at Booth, 95. So it's always great to be with some U Chicago alums. And let's keep it interactive. Definitely keep the questions coming. Because this is for the Young Professionals series, the workshop is oriented towards really the basics of LinkedIn, and then sort of anybody should be able to gain something from this. I think professionals of different levels, but we definitely wanted to start from the basics as well. So let's jump in, but let's keep it interactive. As Josh mentioned, I'm an executive coach. I specialize in leadership development, and I also do lots of personal branding work with my leaders, and some element of that obviously lands into how are they presenting themselves on LinkedIn. So I have been around the block a few times with how to use LinkedIn. But what we're going to talk about, a little bit of background just to set the stage. I'll give you some interesting facts about why LinkedIn is an important place to have a brand. The brand is being you. We'll talk about 10 best practices to improve your profile, 5 things to avoid, and then a couple of two really critical tips that a lot of people don't know about. So definitely lots of good information. And then we're going to preview some LinkedIn profiles, and we'll have a chance to do some real-time coaching with those people if they're in attendance. A little bit of background just to set the stage. So LinkedIn has been around for a long time, and we can see globally it is widely utilized. The US is the largest users of LinkedIn, followed by the UK. So very much, if you're looking for jobs in those markets, this is going to be a great place for you. Most recruiters in those markets are also predominantly using LinkedIn for job search as well. Lots of other good reasons to be on LinkedIn, but job search is certainly one of the critical ones. We can see the other statistics here. It is a highly adapted and used platform. And importantly, that last bullet, almost 6 in 10 organizations use LinkedIn. And as many of you, I'm sure, know, LinkedIn is really considered the social media site for professionals, whereas Facebook or Instagram or TikTok is a bit more sort of for your personal side. So this is a place to represent yourself professionally. In terms of engagement, people that use LinkedIn use it often. 48% of users check the site several times a week. About 14% check it daily. Number 2 is really important. LinkedIn is now the predominant source of recruitment from headhunters, executive search, professional recruiters, corporate recruiters. So they're running their searches through LinkedIn, and they're getting 15 times more impressions than job postings. More effective way to find candidates for lots of reasons. And we're going to talk about how you can be seen as a candidate today. Skills are something that are critical to convey. What are your key skills this is an actually overlooked thing. The most in-demand skills right now tend to all fall in the realm of coding and tech. Not super surprising. If you don't have those skills, no worries. We're going to talk about just how to elevate your profile to be seen for whatever field you are in. LinkedIn also a more effective way to try to connect with somebody than just sending an email. You can see if you're connected to somebody. You can see if you know common people. You can see if maybe you went to the same school as that person. And for those reasons, people tend to read LinkedIn mails and respond to LinkedIn mails more so than just a regular cold email from somebody saying, would you schedule 15 minutes to chat with me about how I could develop my career, for instance. The final way that we might think about LinkedIn as well is being seen as a subject matter expert. And for that, then LinkedIn is more about how are you posting, how are you sharing information, and how are you creating a brand as an expert of a certain area. And then for that one, certain times are the best times to post to LinkedIn in terms of being seen and getting lots of views. Interesting information when we think about usage and gender. And so I spend a lot of time in my leadership work thinking about gender differences in leadership. So this is actually really interesting to me as well. Not surprising to me because women do tend to feel they have to be overly qualified before they apply to a job. Men can be underqualified and confident that they still have the capabilities to get there. So women do tend to apply to fewer jobs than men. Women are also less likely to ask for a referral, and referrals are critical for job success, for applying. And so for the women out there, think about, could you be stretching yourself a bit more? Could you be developing your network a bit more strategically and asking for referrals, and even start with building your connections now? Recruiters are 13% less likely, unfortunately, to click on a women's profile versus a man. So we know there's gender bias in search. There's lots of bias. We're humans. That's how our brains work. But particularly for the women that are here today, the call to action is think if you could stretch yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit, particularly with being realistic with what you're qualified for and going for some of those positions. And the statistic at the top, women typically feel they need to meet 100% of the criteria. This relates to internal jobs as well. Women that are internal to organizations trying to move up to the next level often feel like they have to check every single one of those boxes. Men can check 60 of those boxes and say, yeah, I'm ready to move up to that level. I got this. So men tend to have more confidence about that. We could call it overconfidence. But I guess it depends on the person. So women less likely to apply, but when they do apply, typically they probably got a stronger skill set because they felt they needed to have 100% of the qualifications. So they're more likely to get hired, and they're more likely to get hired even more so for senior roles, which is good news. And so again, think about, are you pursuing stretch opportunities? The men and the women here today, all of us should be thinking about, are we really stretching ourselves? And LinkedIn has some nice tools to help you match as well your qualifications to certain jobs once you start applying for jobs. I'm going to pause there and we'll take a look at our takeaways here. Any questions or comments before we jump into sort of the how-to of the profiles?
Great. Keep those questions coming in.
Okay.
Ken.
You kind of already touched upon this, but I feel like not just women, but folks with underrepresented backgrounds, men included, should maybe stretch themselves a bit and kind of apply for jobs where they may seem unqualified at first or maybe underqualified. That was just a thought that I had.
Yes, fantastic. I agreed. And some of the tips we're going to talk about to strengthen your profile will help you be more confident in your qualifications and your skill sets to apply for jobs. Yeah. So let's jump forward into that segment. And as Josh mentioned, we afterwards will send out this one-page PDF that's going to give you the walkthrough of everything that we talked about. Feel free to take notes. We are also taking some notes that we can share, but you will get this PDF that's going to give you all of the tips that we talk about here today. Before we jump into tips, a question that often comes up is, should I copy and paste my resume into LinkedIn? No, you should not do that. LinkedIn is very different than a resume. It's first, it's your public profile right now. It's the brand that you're putting out there into world. You may have different versions of your resume. You should have different versions of your resume. This isn't a resume workshop, so I'm not going to talk about that a lot, but LinkedIn is really the image that you want to convey to the world right now. That may shift over time, but it is typically easily found depending on the security settings. People can either just see a little bit about you, or they may be able to see your whole profile depending on how you have that set up. But it is a brand that people can find and search and will find when they look for your name. Resumes are meant to be a bit more formal. They're meant to be chronological. They're meant to be a bit more of a walkthrough of your work history with typically some fairly standard ways of presenting work history, education, and some critical skills, etc. LinkedIn has a lot more opportunity to share who you are, to let some of your personality shine through, to link articles, or you can post and that will be apparent, sort of what you're sharing and posting on. So there's a lot more richness in terms of opportunities to be seen in the space that is your LinkedIn profile. A critical fact to know about a resume: when you send somebody a resume, whether they're looking at it online or on a piece of paper, they're looking at it in 7 seconds. So in a resume, you really want that headline, the top section, to catch somebody's eye. I could spend a whole hour talking about optimizing resumes, but LinkedIn isn't dissimilar to that. You can share more context and personality, but we still need to capture somebody's attention pretty quickly, particularly if it's a recruiter and we're aiming for a job, but also if we want to be seen as a subject matter expert. How are you going to convey that to that person in the first 7 seconds that they're looking at your profile? Most of us don't want to go clicking through a variety of different links to try to figure out who somebody is. We want it in front of us. We are living in the information overloaded age today. So quick hits of information is needed. And again, as I've said, there's different things, and we'll look at this in some of the sample profiles that we're looking at. There's different ways to show who you are. Some of these are more useful than others, depending on why you're using LinkedIn. And we'll think about a couple of different case scenarios about why you might be using attachments and hyperlinks and videos, etc. But now to focus specifically on LinkedIn, as I've said a couple of times, it really depends on why you need LinkedIn as to how you establish your profile. So when you think about the profile that you have right now and maybe the changes you'd like to make, think about, why do you need LinkedIn? Are you searching for jobs? Are you trying to market? I'm an executive coach. People find me often on LinkedIn. So for me, it's a marketing tool. I don't need a job, but I am marketing my services in some ways. Are you just trying to build your network? Maybe you don't need a job. You're not thinking about switching, but it is important to be strategic and proactive about sustaining a network. You might want to create visibility to your work, maybe just even internally. You think, well, my boss can see my LinkedIn, and here's an opportunity for me to be able to put a bit more flavor into who I am and what I've been doing here. We don't often share a resume with our current boss. The pandemic also, with people working in remote locations, more and more work colleagues are checking each other out on LinkedIn as we have less time in office. So think about why you want to use LinkedIn right now, and that should feed this, that's the starting point to sort of feed how you start to develop your profile. Your strategy for using LinkedIn may change over time. Maybe you're looking for a job, you get that job, and so suddenly LinkedIn has a different purpose to you. That's a good time to revisit and refresh. So think about refreshing LinkedIn periodically. And I'd say most of us don't do a good enough job of really sustaining and strategically building our network. So if you don't have tons of connections or you haven't added connections recently, maybe set some soft goals for yourself to add connections over the next week or so. People you've met in the last few years, people that you've worked with, or even go back to fellow alums, etc., and just be a bit more intentional about creating that network. Ultimately, this is about what's the call to action you want others to know about you. LinkedIn has some very easy ways to make it obvious. If you're looking for a job, it's right there at the top. I'm open to new opportunities. But if you're not looking for a job, maybe your call to action has to be a little bit more baked into how you establish your profile. So think about what your call to action is. We always want to start with, like, why are we thinking about changing this right now? And now we're going to walk through 10 really specific enhancements to LinkedIn. The first is your contact information. So often this is overlooked. There's a section in your profile where you can include your email, your cell phone if you want, or your office phone if you have a landline, your website if relevant, and specifically your LinkedIn URL can actually be customized. So if your LinkedIn URL right now is your name with about 15 letters and numbers following it, which is impossible for anybody to just recognize it, see if you can shorten it. My LinkedIn profile is linkedin.com, / Mary Beth Sigler. That wasn't given to me. They added lots of numbers and letters after my name, but you can edit that. But definitely think and check to see, what are you sharing and what do you want to share? Make it easy for people to reach you. I can't tell you how many times somebody will reach out to me to say, I'm interested in coaching. They don't give me an email in LinkedIn, and I go to their LinkedIn profile and there's no email there. There's no way for me to email them directly. So then we're messaging through LinkedIn, which is not what I prefer for somebody that's trying to talk to me. So takeaway number one is really check that contact information. Again, really overlooked. Okay, the second one is the headline. At the top of your profile, you have a headline, which LinkedIn will automatically pull typically from your current position. So my headline may say executive leadership coach because that's what my current position says, but you can edit that headline. For certain roles, and this is specific to you, situational and personal preference, to be honest. For certain roles, your job title may be the most relevant thing to convey. Other people like to use that headline to highlight the wider diversity of who they are. Or maybe they use a bit of a metaphor or story to sort of encapsulate who they are. I'm a visual storyteller that, delivers keynotes. Might be one way of thinking about that. Or a lot of people put a variety of different things, a little running list of, marketing manager, data-driven marketer, et cetera, et cetera. So I think this is personal preference. The tendency, if you read best practices, is to do more with that headline. But I have a preference. I think it shows a lot of sort of gravitas for me in my role to keep it simple. But again, personal preference. Test it out for yourself. On the worksheet that we will send out, we have a cue for what's a simple headline, how might you do, and what's a bolder headline if you were to be a bit more creative. And then test it out, play around with it, see which one feels right, maybe test it out with a peer as well. Okay, also really basic, and often overlooked as well, is a good headshot. It should speak to your audience. You can get a little bit creative with this if you want. If you're in a creative field, absolutely. You probably want to show a bit more flair. If you're in a more serious field where a lot of gravitas, you probably want to convey that. Think about that as well. Phone cameras take good enough pictures, what you want to focus on. So don't feel intimidated that you have to get a professional photographer. But where you want to focus on is, what do you want? What are you wearing? You know, obviously professional appearance, and then some kind of neutral background. A line of trees in the background that just presents sort of a nice neutral background is perfect for LinkedIn. A bit better than a blank wall as well. Okay, so we're going to start to get into some deeper content sections here. So the about me is the first impression. That's the first 7 seconds. People are going to look at your headline, they're going to see your picture, and then they're going to jump into that about me. This is your chance to make a strong first impression. It's how you define yourself. Some really important things to convey here. Again, it starts with, what is your strategy here? But here you want to convey, who are you professionally? Below this section is a summary of your work experience, so you don't need to regurgitate that. This shouldn't be a chronological list of your job titles. It should actually go a bit deeper into who you are. Really critical in this section is to include keywords that relate to what you do or what you want to be seen for. This can be as simple as a running list of critical skills or core strengths and just list them out. Why is it important to do this here? Because we know LinkedIn has keyword capability coming through in other areas, such as the skills section down at the bottom. It's because by getting those keywords into that about me, it has two purposes. One, you tell humans that are looking at this, it's a quick way in that 7 seconds that they're glancing at your profile to give them a lot of information. But more importantly, it's going to much more powerfully drive the LinkedIn algorithm to match you to people that might be looking for those keywords. So for instance, if you're a data-driven marketer and you don't say data-driven marketing anywhere in that about me, your about me is just sort of talking about your day-to-day jobs, you're not going to be found for that. So this is one of the key takeaways I want everybody to have from this session today. Make sure your about me conveys keywords that you want to be seen for, so that recruiters or people that are trying to find you or what you want to be known for is immediate apparent. I'm going to pause there and just see if we have any comments or questions at this point.
Yes, Mary Beth, we had some questions come in. One is, so how can I better explain what I do or what I want to do next? And where is the space to do that?
Yes, fantastic question. So what you do now, to better explain it, what most people do is they think about what they do their day-to-day responsibilities. That's not what you want to convey. What you want to use LinkedIn to convey is actually the value that you've brought, the impact that you've made, how you might differentiate yourself from others. So you want to bring it up a few levels to a much more strategic view of your skill set. Rather than, you know, I led a team of 5 people to deliver top quality customer service. You want to say, I'm an excellent customer service provider who leads global teams towards, etc. So bring it up a level. It can be hard to write that yourself. So again, use a friend, lean on somebody that can help you get away from what you do day in and day out to a higher level.
Thank you. Another question, it really hits on your notion of the about me as a storytelling section. I'm interested in that myself. At UChicago, I did major in English. How would you recommend writing that about me? More, in paragraph form, bullet
Yes.
pointed form? And would you use, say, first person, third person even? You know, how how would
Yes.
you recommend like telling that story?
Yes. There's no the beauty of LinkedIn is that there's no one format. Whereas a resume that's written in a way that isn't standard would look very odd. Anything goes almost with LinkedIn. I've seen people use that about me to really tell a story about how, as a child, they like to build puzzles and how that builds today to their capability and really connecting disparate parts of the organization as like a chief strategy officer. They just led with a full out story that goes back to childhood. Some people keep it very professional using that third person, right? Josh is an associate director of etc.
Hmm.
I've heard best practice sessions on LinkedIn say never use third person, but I don't agree with that. But I do think the more senior you are, the more mature you are, again, the more gravitas that you might want to convey, that's where it becomes a bit more relevant. If you're somebody that's a professional speaker and you have a speaking bio, or you know, you're very senior levels of organization, it's a bit more appropriate to somebody younger in career. So for young alumni who are earlier in careers, I'd say probably first person is going to be the way to go. It's a bit more informal. It creates that connection a little bit more than a third person. Yeah.
Love that. In short, it depends. I
It
love that.
depends.
Yep.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. So definitely most people can spend some time in that about me section. Think about how you can add both keywords and add a bit more of your personality. Include key awards, some hobbies, a little bit about what you do. Your picture can also do that as well. Okay, moving on, education. Really basic here. We all have our education link, most likely. Don't hesitate to expand that if it's relevant, to include courses, meaningful interests, particularly if you're younger in your career. That still feels a bit more relevant. You may want employers to know you have accounting skills or you took creative writing, because those may be skills that you're not doing in your job, but you may want to find in a job in the future. One really critical thing, particularly for the older folks, you don't have to include graduation dates on LinkedIn. It doesn't look like you can remove them, but you can. You just don't put the date. And anyone that has more than 20 years of experience, probably you want to get rid of those dates and maybe eliminate some of your earlier positions. Same thing goes with resumes, because people don't need to know if you're 35 or 45 or 55. They just need to know that you're qualified for that position. So definitely take a look at your education and include skills, activity, leadership roles. And this is a great opportunity for the younger in the career alums to think about, again, maybe I don't have tons of skills yet. I'm just going into my first job, or I'm in my first job. This can be a way to add a bit more flavor, a bit more skills, a bit more strengths into your profile. Okay, so we have 5 more tips. Let's get through these. Experience. This is really, again, where we're sharing what our current role is. But I challenge you to elevate it. Don't just list titles. Some people don't list anything. They just have a job title and some dates. So we want to go a bit more beyond that. But don't think in terms of day-to-day responsibilities. Think about how you make an impact. How have you been recognized? We all know that we should be trying to use metrics if we can, right? I managed a $50 billion budget or something like that to show what you're capable of. But even if you don't have metrics, try to elevate towards really sort of impact, value added. And if you said, on my very best day of the job, here's the things I'm doing, maybe that's a good way of answering it as well. Okay, so to the earlier points on storytelling, LinkedIn has a lot more capability towards creating an emotional connection with somebody than a resume does. A resume is a piece of paper. There's not a photo of you. There's not a lot of context as to who you are. LinkedIn, the real value of it, in addition to sort of just the algorithms that can drive people to find you easier, is that you can share whatever you'd like about you. You can include photos, you can include links, you can include stories, you can link to your website, you can link to articles you published, you could publish articles on LinkedIn. But think about, again, what is your strategy right now? What's your why for using LinkedIn? And then what are the ways that will help people make a connection to that why? One underutilized area of LinkedIn is the background photo. So at the very top, behind your circular photo of your headshot is a long rectangle, which can be a LinkedIn standard block kind of photo. LinkedIn gives you some options for backgrounds. Many corporate people put a corporate background if you want to be associated with your current employer. But you can also add an interesting background. And I've had clients who have added things like mountain climbing shots, and then had people who have been reaching out to them ask them about that. That type of hooking people to create a connection to you is exactly the opportunity that LinkedIn provides, particularly if you're searching for jobs where it might just be that connection in mountain climbing that gets you a second look from a recruiter or from the hiring manager. It might also just be adding some more flavor to who you are. So think about what's an interesting background picture. If you were to change that background picture, what might you change it to? If you've ever given a big speech and you want to be known as a subject matter expert, maybe it's you standing on a stage looking out at an audience. Let's go to 8. So moving through almost down sort of as we were looking at our profiles into the recommendation section. Recommendations are a really useful way to credentialize yourself. No matter where you are in your career, recommendations are helpful. So think about, do you have any recommendations? If not, or do you have just a few? Who can you ask? These could be people you work with. They can be colleagues, professors, people that maybe organizations you've volunteered with, anybody that can speak to your skill set, your strengths, and some of this value that we're trying to convey that we can bring. Most people don't think very strategically about these recommendations. And so my challenge to you is, as a result of today's workshop, can you ask 5 people for a recommendation? And a really nice way to do that is to say, I'd love to ask you, send them an email, a personal email, to say, I'd love to ask you for a recommendation on LinkedIn. And it would be great if you could focus on X, and let them know, which helps them obviously then know what you're trying to convey and what they can speak to. And then LinkedIn has a built-in recommendation. When you go into the recommendation section, it lets you generate that link automatically in LinkedIn. But give them a heads up, tell them what you're trying to use LinkedIn for, and can they help you reflect X, your strengths, the value you're adding, etc., your volunteer work, whatever that might be. Okay, so this isn't a section, but this is a tip on the search engine optimization for you. I've said keywords probably at least a dozen times already. I'm going to say it again a dozen more. The real value of LinkedIn is the ability for people to find you. And again, depending on what you need LinkedIn for, obviously, if you don't need LinkedIn, then it's not critical for you to have a profile. But if you do have a profile and you're joining today, it's probably because you'd like to use it for something. Think about what you want to be seen for and what are the keywords that are going to help you be seen for what you do. So if you're job searching, it's probably a list of critical skills for somebody in your job. We'll take a look at a couple of profiles in a minute so you can see what this looks like. But probably critical skill sets in your job, but it might also include certifications that you have. If you have hard, like coding skills or something, you may include that as well. Maybe you're not using that coding right now, but you know it's something you might want to move towards. So what are all the keywords that reflect what you're trying to convey? And then if you're trying to meet a job description or meet a market, what are the market keywords that you might want to be reflecting? And to the extent that you have those, make sure that you're encapsulating those, right? Again, let's go back to our data-driven marketing. If you're looking for a job in data-driven marketing, go and find some current job descriptions and look to see how are those job skills being portrayed now. The way recruiters portray job skills evolves a little bit over time. So make sure you're current with how you're portraying your skill sets. And let's get the last tip, and then we will pause for some questions. So content, LinkedIn is a great way to write content, to share content, particularly if you want to be seen as a subject matter expert. If you want to, I have a lot of leaders that I coach that even within the context of trying to move up within their organizations, want to be seen as subject matter experts, and they're trying to find speaking and panel discussions and things they can do to put themselves out there publicly. LinkedIn has that capability as well. Your colleagues, your network, people that are connected to you can see what you're writing, and that's going to elevate your brand in that content. So think about what you might share and if that's important to you. Now, not everybody wants to share in post. It does take time. So I'd say this tip really only applies if this is something that you're motivated to do and that you feel is going to be meaningful towards using your profile more effectively. So let's pause there and take some questions.
Yes, we have a number of insightful questions from our UChicago alumni community. One, I think we'll kind of work our way kind of big picture, and also from your most recent point to some earlier ones that you made along this slide. So one alum writes about being an introvert, and so like finding the concept of connecting, of reaching out, posting, and so forth, fairly exhausting. And even though the need for networking is understood, the note, like just like this concept seems daunting. So, what particular advice do you have for those sorts of job seekers and professionals who care about career growth, but find all this to be just daunting and a lot of work?
Yes, great question. A couple of things. I think LinkedIn is the easiest pill to swallow for social connections. You can hide behind your laptop and but still make connections with people. It's as easy as just hitting that connect button. Your ability to make the connection will be strengthened if you add a bit of a note and you put a little bit more energy into it. But I'd say, one, just small steps towards that. Can you set very small goals? So you don't want to overwhelm yourself and think I have to build 2,000 connections in the next month, but can you challenge yourself to maybe, one connection a day or something like that? Find a very small, easy to check off goal that's going to not be overwhelming for your introvert energy, which I have as well. So keep it small, but keep it consistent. Yeah.
Great. And then with respect to some of those, I guess some of those benchmarks, how relevant is that 500 plus connections benchmark for LinkedIn? Is that a goal for developing professionals to set, like get to that 500 plus?
That's a great question. I don't know that anybody's looking at somebody's profile and saying, well, gee, John's only got 20 connections. I mean, I think this really, again, speaks to what do you need LinkedIn for? You're going to benefit the more people that you're connected to because of the way the algorithms work. Recruiters will find you more easily if you have any kind of shared connection in there as well, shared history. So more connections is generally going to be better. But it ultimately comes down to what is your purpose for using the profile. I've worked with venture capitalists who don't want to be so public and so known, and it's not a consideration for them at all. They really only connect with the people they need to, and they're trying to keep a lower profile. So think about what your goal is.
And then with respect to that the SEO piece, like I guess what is there a difference between simply writing out keywords, or should they be like embedded within a paragraph or story? And then the kind of corollary to that is just how do you recommend keeping up with what are the top keywords for a given industry? How do you stay current?
Yes, great questions. They can be both embedded as well as, I'd say, just call them out on a list. And again, we'll take a look at a couple of profiles so that we can see what that looks like. How to stay current, everybody that's in the working world should try to stay current, but most of us don't do it because life is busy and we're focused on our jobs and not thinking about the fact that maybe some years down the road we may want to shift. But I'd say perhaps use this as your call to action and take a look at some other profiles. Google, you can search for sort of your role, find some other people that are doing your role, see how they're presenting their skill sets, the skill sets that probably you're also using, and search for some job descriptions as well. You can do this all within LinkedIn, and that's a nice way just to see, how are people talking about this now? What are some of the keywords that are being used today that maybe isn't how I would describe myself 10 years ago.
And then I guess, and then one more before we do our live workshopping, see theory and practice, is with respect to that experience section. Like, how do you curate that experience section in terms not only of like which positions to include, but say within that, how might you use that as a sort of master resume, as one alum writes in, with description of not only of what you've done there, what you've achieved there, but even say samples that you include in that section.
Yes, great question. I like the word curate there, and storytelling. What is the story that you want to tell somebody about who you are? I would say we want to be factual, but we don't need to say everything. And the analogy that I like to use is if you were to go on a first date with somebody, you wouldn't sort of data dump your entire romantic history to that person. The same thing with LinkedIn. We don't need to data dump every single salient feature, but what's most critical to tell. So jobs from 25 years ago, for the more experienced alums, you may not need to reference those. That research assistant position, maybe not relevant anymore. And so, but does it tell a story? Maybe it does. Maybe it connects critical pieces for you. I would start with, again, the why, and then what is the story that I want to convey to myself? And then what are the data points that convey that most effectively? For experience, recruiters do want to see a chronological order, and gaps typically are red flags. So I wouldn't advocate omitting pieces of information that leaves some gaps there. But think about how you might curate pieces of information within each one of those each one of those roles you've had to build a compelling story up to where you are today.
So to extend the metaphor, it's an exhibit or an exhibition, not necessarily an archive.
Oh, that's a great metaphor, Josh. Yeah, exactly. Fantastic. Okay, so let's jump in. I'm talking a lot and we're running out of time. Before we jump into some live profiles, some 5 warning signs. Keep that job history updated or current. Make sure you have a decent headshot. It doesn't have to be amazing, but make sure it reflects the professionalism that you need. Obviously, writing and typos. Just some basic job facts. Most people need and should go above and beyond that. And we want to avoid not having a clear way of following what you've been doing and the story, the exhibit that you're showing about yourself. Unexplained gaps are always red flags for recruiters on resumes or in LinkedIn. Yeah. So you may need to use that about section. If you took a sabbatical for a few years for some reason, you could explain that as well in that about section, and that provides a nice little context setting as well. And then two really important tips. These are not super well understood, but are incredibly important. If you're not currently employed, if you've just graduated, or maybe you're still a student and you don't have a current job, but you want to be found by recruiters or employers, you don't actually appear in searches. It's a little bit of a weird, glitchy thing. So if you're not currently like employed, you don't actually look employable, is I guess the logic. So the workaround is to include in the current job field, rather than your title, desired title. And then in the company, you could type in industry, and that works just fine. It makes you active as a job seeker. And then in that about section, make sure you select open to new opportunities. Yeah. And then the second tip is you can change the visibility of your profile so that as we're about to all jump into our profiles, the rest of the day, we're all going to be furiously changing our LinkedIn profiles. You don't want everybody in your network to know that you're changing things or playing around with the headline. You can change the visibility of your profile to private so nobody can see that you're making these changes. The LinkedIn default is public. So every time you change your headline, people can see that. So definitely set that to private. And then you can edit like crazy and nobody knows that you're making changes unless they go and look at your profile. Okay, so the takeaways, I hope you had more than these, but some of the 3 ones are really keep it current, share some personality, and utilize those keywords. Okay, so we wanted to make this real life applicable. We have a couple of profiles to share, and then maybe we'll even workshop one on the workshop and on the webinar as well. So this is a recent Chicago graduate. He just graduated on Saturday. This is my son. He gave me permission to use his profile. So kudos to him for sharing. So what we're going to do is see that we can see right away he's got a professional photo. He wanted to wear a suit and tie, which is fantastic. He was looking for jobs in economics. We can see a nice headline picture back there. Washington, D.C. He's interested in counterterrorism. So he's looking for jobs perhaps in Washington, just add some context there. But we can see I've just sort of highlighted this nice about section. So we had some of those questions about how do we get those keywords in there? You can see it just headlines with the keywords. This is what I have experience in. You can also see it noted down there. There's the list. Skills, which are keywords based on jobs he was looking at and he knew he needed to be reflective of. He actually found a job from a LinkedIn recruiter that reached out to find him. So the keyword algorithm does work. What else do we see here? He doesn't have 500 connections. He's pretty young. Again, I don't think that's super important, but we see the place that he was working, Chicago Project on Securities and Threats, and we see his education and we see his title. The next page that we'll look at with this, here we have some experience to look at. And again, we talked about what did you do, or how do you elevate your experience away from like, what did you do day to day to a higher level impact? So this profile, he led this team, and this is a higher level. He was actually sifting through data and documents himself, but he also led a team. So he leads off the profile with that sort of higher level leadership. We can see also that some of the research that he did led to some articles that were published, 2 Atlantic articles and another PDF that they put out on the January 6th insurrection is what the topic was. So he's hyperlinked these. People can see and understand the context of the work he's doing. Where did that lead to? Again, it tells a bit more of a story than just, I've been compiling data on, counter-terrorists or white nationalist terrorists in the US. Yeah. And then down there at the very bottom, peer mentor. So again, adding a little bit of flavor. What else have you done? What are some things you've done at the university that you want to make sure that you can call out? Clubs you were part of, experiences you had, volunteer work you did, etc. Let's call up the second part of this. So there's a skills section where you can actually select the skills. Again, the keywords that we were talking about, elevate that, but there is a skill section. You should self-select skills that are relevant, and then other people can endorse you for those, as LinkedIn sort of prompts people that are visiting your profile to endorse you. There's a language section. There's a section for organizations, for nonprofit work, for volunteer work, etc. Make sure you do the skills section. Make sure you connect as much as you can. Again, this is all just helping other people understand who you are. So he was on the Ultimate Frisbee Club, big part of his personality, lots of his social life. Somebody maybe can resonate with that. And then make sure in the interest section as well, you can follow companies, you can follow groups, you can follow influencers if you want to follow Bill Gates. But that helps as well. If you spend time on LinkedIn, it feeds you information from those things, but it also indicates to other people what you're interested in, and it a little bit feeds that LinkedIn algorithm. So this is a recent grad profile that pretty good in terms of presentation, content, and some personality there as well. Let's jump to a real profile. I'm going to get out of the PDF for a second here. And so, Josh, do we have Brianna on?
We do. Brianna Moore, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
Brianna, would you mind if I share your LinkedIn profile?
Sure, you can go ahead.
There you are. Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Brianna, for offering to be our guinea pig here. So curious, when we're seeking just the top part of your profile, what can we help you with most? What are your questions about how to optimize your profile?
Oh, I see. Well, I am thinking more, because I am currently employed, and I would like to consider, just looking at what other skills I could develop in not just my realm, but maybe some adjacent ones. And so I guess I'm not always sure how to indicate, since I work in sustainability and that field is so very broad, kind of trying to see, sorry, I'm not being very articulate, but
Okay,
if there are somewhat adjacent fields, say like environmental sciences, engineering, things like that, but maybe I'm tangentially interested in, not necessarily currently seeking employment within those realms, but if I just want to learn more what all of that might be about. Maybe if that gets any interest from people who are currently working in those fields, making it seem like I'm more open to learning more about those sorts of things.
Fantastic.
Maybe that would be helpful.
Okay, fantastic. So we'll take your interest in things like environmental engineering, and how do you then use LinkedIn to optimize towards that? So a couple of things. I wish I had time to ask you questions, because I'm a coach. I would typically start with, what do you like about your profile, and start there, but we're running out of time. So maybe just to hit on some of the highlights. I love your background picture. It works really well with environmental field. You got some little green plants there. Your picture shows just a warm, friendly, charismatic person, which is fantastic. It's professional. It's perfect. And then you have your title, and we can see a little bit of description here. I'd say, just based on what we talked about, you have an opportunity to improve this about section. Your title is your title. I think that's fine. You might angle that a bit more broadly, but I don't necessarily think you need to. I'd say for your interest in learning more about other fields that might be parallel or related, take a look at some people that are in those fields. Probably you want to start connecting with them. If so motivated, you might even, message them and say, I'd love to learn more about what you do as I think about my longer term career. That's a great use of LinkedIn. But for your profile, I'd say, see if you can add a bit more. As I read it, I had a somewhat good idea of what you did, but I didn't really know, like, what exactly are you doing to advance energy efficiency? So I think you have an opportunity to give more flavor there, while also then to your goals of exploring other fields, maybe talk about some of those other areas that you're interested in as well. Those things, mentioning, interest in environmental engineering and maybe some specific things that might speak to you in those fields, will also help add a lot more flavor. First and foremost, it's going to help you. It's going to present like a North Star to you to start directing your own energies that way, but then it's going to let other people understand that about you as well.
Okay. Yeah, if you don't mind me asking, so in that
Sure.
case, I know we don't want to be too specific in the about us, about what we're doing in our day-to-day. So would
Yes.
something more descriptive than what I have just be, I guess, lending more to that impact or purpose?
Exactly.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah, like, what's the impact you have on the community? I assume you're having an impact on the community if you work for a county land use department. That might be one angle. Or do you connect do you connect the community around environmental initiatives? That might be, yeah. But I'd say think about that higher level. And if we look down here at your experience, not bad, right? Just some simple descriptives here, but see if you can, what does it actually mean to maintain energy efficiency and conservation programs? Like, what's the value? What's the impact? What are the connections you're driving, or the real value that you're providing to your consumers or to your employer? Yeah. We're just about at time. I wish we had more time to go through this, but I hope everybody had some critical takeaways for yourself, for your profiles today. We will share the one pager that's going to help you think about the takeaways. And Josh, any closing words from you?
Yes, I just want to thank everyone for joining us today. You've taken a concrete step toward advancing your careers. I'd like to highlight a few things coming up today, including a session about whether it might be time for an MBA and what are the benefits perhaps of exploring that. I'm putting in the chat an important survey to tell us your thoughts about this event. You can look up more in the series, including time for an MBA this evening. Also relevant to some of the questions raised, interviewing for introverts, particularly virtual interviews and in-person ones, is coming up. And then we also had some notes about using LinkedIn for pivoting from one career to another. You can also learn all about how to do that from alumni who have gone from one industry to another as well. I put in a link to our LinkedIn group so that you can connect with your fellow alumni there as well. And hey, that you use that hive mind, the life of the hive mind, to get some feedback on your LinkedIn profile. I want to give an extra special thank you to Mary Beth Sigler for all of her insights today on how to level up your LinkedIn and really use it to your advantage to achieve your goals. So thank you once again for joining us, and have a wonderful rest of the day. We will share resources shortly.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.